if you're trying to go from the equation to the graph, so let's say you've got the equation on your paper, what I would recommend doing is coming here and just changing the a, b, h, and k values to see what happens to the graph. Okay, so for example, let's say that you were looking at, let's pick one of these from our sheet here. So let's say you were looking at y equals 3 sine 4x plus 1. Okay. So y equals 3 sine 4x plus 1. Okay. Let me change the color on that. All right. So this is what we want our graph to look like, the blue one. Right now, it looks like the red one. So what I would say is just, you could type the equation into Desmos, but I'd like you to kind of get a feel for what each of these things is doing to the equation. So this a value is 3. So take your a value and change it, move that slider until it gets to be 3. So you can see what's happening to the graph as you change it. It's getting taller. Okay. The b value, now in this example, the b value is inside the parentheses, but we can take it out and put it in front of the parentheses like it is here. So the b value is 4. So as we adjust that b value, let's see what happens to the graph. Okay, it's going up and down a lot more often. So we're changing that b value to 4, and it's going to go up and down a lot more often. Something else you can do too is you can actually type in the b value here, but I think it's better to just move that slider so you can see what's happening. Okay? And we can see it's pretty lined up here now, but there's one more piece of information here, this plus 1 at the end. Okay? That's our k value. So let's take that k value and move that up 1, and now we can see they line up one on top of the other. Okay, so maybe playing with these sliders a little bit will help you see what's happening when we adjust those different things in the equation. Okay? Now, going from the graph to the equation might be a little bit more difficult. So let's say I'm going to take this back to 0, take this back down to 1, this back down to 1. Okay. Let's say that that I wanted this blue graph, but I didn't know this equation here. I couldn't see this equation. So what you might just start doing is playing with these different values here. So you know that you might start moving a around and seeing what happens. Okay, well, if it's negative, it flips it upside down. So let's leave it positive. But we can see that as we move it around, it gets taller and shorter. And we know that it's supposed to be a certain height. So maybe, you know, you go like this and you think, okay, that's good because now it's at the same height that this one is, even though down here it goes a little bit lower. So maybe you just start there. Maybe you think the a value is 4. Well, then you maybe start adjusting the b value to see what happens. And you can see, oh, okay, that's stretching it out or bringing it closer together. And you can see, ooh, when I bring it close together like that, that's pretty good. That seems to fit pretty well. So I'll stop there. And then maybe you take the h value and you start moving that and you realize, oh, it's moving that graph left and right. And actually it was pretty lined up to begin with. So we'll just leave the h value where it was. Okay. And then we start playing with the k value and we can see, oh, that moves the graph up and down. Well, that's pretty good because actually I want the top and bottom of my graph to match up, and before they didn't. So maybe I slide it up a little bit and now I can see that it fits pretty well, but now it's too tall. It goes too high on both the top and the bottom. So I think back to what made it too tall. That was the a value. So I'm going to take that a value and bring that back down a little bit. Ooh, that's getting close right there. There it is. So now I have a graph that looks the same. It's right on top of the other one. And so now I can come over here and I can look at my a value, my b value, my h value, my k value, and I can plug those values into my equation, and now I have the equation. Okay? I think it's going to be really helpful for you to play around with these sliders, and it'll seem like guess and check, but the more problems you do, the more intuitive it will become, and you'll start to realize, oh, if I want the graph to do this, I need to adjust this value because you've done it so many times before. So it is just going to take a lot of practice. You know, if I was there teaching you in person, it would be kind of the same thing. We would just have to go over problem after problem after problem. So at least using Desmos, you know, you can kind of get a good idea of what the equation should be by moving those sliders. Now, I understand that, you know, if you're looking at a graph here, you're not going to be able to try and get Desmos to, you know, graph on top of that. Okay. But you can look for certain points. For example, you can see that at pi over 2, you need to be at a height of 5. And at 3 pi over 2, you need to be a height at -1. So you can make sure that your graph matches that. One tricky thing here is Desmos, I don't believe, like I set it from -4 pi to +4 pi, but notice when I move it, it gives me a decimal for h. So you might just need to take your calculator and say, okay, what is 1.57? Okay, well, if you divide that by pi, it will tell you. For example, 1.57, divide that number by pi, and it'll be about 1/2. So that's saying 1/2 pi. Actually, something else I'm going to do here too is I'm going to change this x-axis to go from -4 pi to 4 pi, counting by pi over 4. All right, so now you can see, for example, that when we slide this over, okay, it's moving it left and right, and basically you can kind of see on the graph here, you know, this line here would be pi over 4, this line here would be pi over 2, this would be 3 pi over 4, and that would be pi. And again, you can get that by taking these values and just dividing them by pi and seeing what the fraction comes out to. So this is one of the tougher things we do. I mean, it's taught again in pre-calculus, so just try and stick with it, and I guess let me know if you've got more questions, all right? Thanks, good luck.